Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Moms Making Money Show. I'm your host, Amie Pederson, business mentor and confidence coach for the new and emerging female entrepreneur. I have a special treat for you guys today. I have my friend and one of my very own mentors on today. I have Miss Alecia May. She is an event strategist, and let me just tell you, she knows all the things. She knows all the things that I didn't even know existed as possibilities. And she's going to kind of sprinkle some light on some of those things for us today. I'm going to kind of turn it over to you, Alecia. Can you tell us what made you decide to get into this business and what made you decide to become a business owner in the first place?
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Amie, for having me today.
Of course.
I love all things events. I'm an event strategist. I do event marketing, event sponsorship. One of the main reasons I got into hosting events and bringing my business online was just because I didn't want to commute anymore. I started my career in the corporate world, and I moved to the country after I had my kids, and the drive was over an hour. So by the time I dropped my kids off at daycare, and not that I did, but it was just that. It was literally, I did not want to drive. And after I had my son, I actually broke my pelvis. So I was immobile for 6 months, and there was no way I was getting back to work. So being a business owner at the age of 19, my first business, and then I had a second business, I just knew I wanted to work for myself. And there were so many obstacles definitely in the way because, my family wanted me to get a real job. That, their whole mentality is find a job, get on payroll, get benefits. And really, that was never me. As a young kid, as a teenager, I never really stuck to the norm. I was kind of left, going to the left and exploring new, exciting ventures. And my first business at 19, I messed up a lot. I mean, I was I was 19 years old. I was a teenager, for goodness sake. And I owned a dance studio, a brick and mortar dance studio. And, it was one thing after another, challenges and floods and insurance. And I learned a lot from that. But my main motivation was that I can do this. And what kind of made me motivated was the fact that my family told me I couldn't. So I used that as like momentum and like my the fire beneath my butt to just prove to them that I could. And that shifted over the years, obviously, into more of like, this is my passion. This is what I'm meant to do. So, if I had one thing to tell anybody was, you can do anything you set your mind to, no matter if you are broke and, on the cusp of being evicted. That was me. Hey, I mean, we've all been somewhere. I had $4 to my name. I don't really tell this story, but I had $4 and I used to go grocery shopping at my grandma's house because I had no money, and into a really thriving, successful 6-figure business, at the age of 35. I mean, hey, if I can do it, anyone can do it. So one of the things that I love saying is that, you just have to start somewhere. Even if you have no clue what you want to do and how you want to do it, I say immerse yourself. And some people like to research and be planned. Me, I'm just kind of like, I'm going to immerse myself and actually start somewhere and learn as I go. And then, from a third business, I was like, okay, I need to strategize this a little bit more. And, right? I mean, I started somewhere. You have to start somewhere. So that's kind of my backstory. But events really motivate me because as we go into the live / online world, there's a lot of, you're at home, you're staying at your screen all day. I love the idea of a live event and interacting with people and being, sometimes I do miss interacting with adults every day, but it's what really drives my passion is meeting, connecting with women.
Right. I love that. And I love that you mentioned, and I could almost probably like see you when you were talking about how, the people in your life were telling you to get a real job, like doing the air quotes around the word real job, and I hear that so often, and it's just, I don't know, now it just kind of like, I don't know if it rubs me the wrong way or if it's just like, because I laugh about it now, or I'm like, haha, get a real job. Like, who the heck wants a real job when you've had a taste of entrepreneurship, right? Not that I think there's anything wrong with real jobs, but once you have that taste of freedom, almost, it's a bit different. But there's still, even with that freedom, even with that success, which I know you've definitely found, there are obstacles that come with that. Obstacles from the beginning, obstacles that pop up out of nowhere. Do you feel like you might want to shed a little bit of light on some of the different obstacles that maybe you've overcome?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest obstacles that I had was in the very beginning when I first started was figuring out who I was working for. And because I kind of started working for everybody, and right. I mean, men, women, real estate, just basically anyone that I can get my hands on. And some people might say that it's that's very, getting opportunities, et cetera. But I found it very scattered, and I was working 18-hour days and just accepting everybody. And that was an obstacle that I had to overcome and learn myself, is that I shouldn't say yes to everybody.
Right.
Because not everybody is going to be who you should be serving, really. I mean, you should be serving a specific industry or getting your feet wet in a specific route. And that way you're less scattered and more purposeful. So that obstacle that I overcame, and just being addicted to the phone. When I first started out, I was like, oh my gosh, there's another opportunity. And I was constantly on my phone, constantly working, not being present. And that obstacle was more, okay, let's focus this, and just being more confident. As time goes on, I mean, it's hard to be confident at first because the industry is new to you, especially the online scene. You're not quite as experienced, quote unquote, but those obstacles kind of almost lead you into different obstacles, which client boundaries was one thing. It was so funny. At first I wanted to please everybody, and I'm like, oh yes, I'll get that to you right away. And meanwhile, the deadline was 2 days later. It didn't matter. I wanted to be a people pleaser.
Right.
So had to learn very, very specifically, like, there's boundaries in my life as a mom, as a business owner, and I kind of learned the hard way. And but that's okay. You grow, you learn, and now you have the confidence and the power to say, this is what I do, how I work, how I operate. You have to, kind of go within those realms, because we're moms, right? Little kids. I mean, I'm by myself during the week, so my family's first.
Of course. Yeah. And I think that based just on my experience, I think that a lot of us who start out in business, we are so gung-ho on doing all the things and getting everything right and doing it right now. And we have that incredible sense of urgency, like you said, to, yes, I'll get that to you. And it's like, I got to stop everything I'm doing and get it to you right now. But then as you evolve, you're like, okay, I'll have that to you by Friday. And I think that as we evolve as business owners, our clients kind of evolve with us, because I know working with us together, we were both kind of like, all right, yeah, Friday's good. That's good for me too. It wasn't any major deal if it was like, yeah, I can wait till Friday.
Well, and I think as this, there's nobody dying. I mean, and the fact that it's important, it truly is. But if we can come to a mutual understanding, it's still achievable, it's still attainable. Friday's great. Wednesday would be great, but realistically, Friday is where, I'm making things up now, but Friday is where we'd like to sit. Absolutely. And that seems, hey, I can do this by Friday.
Right.
And it's it's not the end of the world. I know there's some coaches who are like, we need this in 24 hours. And, people are staying up in the middle of the night to finish whatever project they're working on, launch, etc. And it's not urgent. I saw, I don't know if you follow Rachel Hollis. There was a big blip in her book launch, and she stayed up and she made it right. And a lot of people were really pissy. And I'm like, listen, this is a book. It's a book. I mean, it's important, but at the same time, it's not like we're delivering kidneys to life, threatening situations. I'm not downplaying it. I'm just saying, we could be more understanding. I don't know. That's just
agree. And obviously if it's like, oh my gosh, I have to get you connected with this person, or I have to get you into this venue and our deadline is today, that's a little bit different. But that's typically not the place, not the case, especially with, a plan in place.
Exactly. I mean, if you have a strategy, if you've got, things that you need to achieve and you mark them in your calendar and you've planned it out, I think, definitely, stick to your guns with that. But things that are less important, I mean, they could, a few days, 3-4 days, why not? Is it going to affect you in a negative or positive way right now? Or, then, I just say, hey, let's be more easygoing.
Agree. Yeah.
In that world, though, however, sometimes that is not the case because things are really time sensitive. If I'm planning a Women in Cloud conference for January, and there's, 1,000 attendees, some things are a little bit more urgent than others, especially going, closer to the date.
Right. One thing, though, I like about you, though, is that you're a planner. You take after me. No, or I take after you. I don't know what, maybe that's just why we get along so well. But one thing I remember when we first spoke, and you said, hey, if you're going to be planning an event, give yourself sufficient time to plan. And your time frame to plan, because I was like, oh yeah, a month or two is probably fine for something small. And you were like, no, you need more time than that. And I know that comes from experience, because now I've implemented that plan and that strategy even for my next events that I have coming up, and what a difference it makes. There's like, the pressure is less, everything seems to kind of fit together. Like, don't get me wrong, I'll probably, our team will probably be running around like chickens with their heads cut off day of, making sure all the things are kind of lined out appropriately. But it does make a difference to know what to expect, to know how to line things out, and then to know that you can get help with some of your event stuff.
Absolutely. I don't know why a lot of women think that it only takes a couple of months, and maybe, and to me, I'm like, well, how long did it take to plan your wedding? And I kind of put in perspective. I mean, when you're doing an event, even if it's a local event, but a lot of women do, retreats at different locations outside their own home base. That, to me, the communication with people in different countries or different states even, that typically, whatever you think, I always say double that planning time, because it is a very back and forth kind of, if you're speaking to vendors, if you're speaking to venue, you're not reliant on your own great planning. You're now reliant on them responding back to you, and you have no idea how long it would take for them. Some hotels are great. Some venues are perfect. Some venues take 2 months to get back to you. I mean, maybe not that extreme, but you're depending on them, and that's where sometimes of the communication kind of breaks down, and it takes a lot longer to get in place. If you have sponsors, same thing. Sponsors get back to you, within a week or two, and then the contract a couple months later, and then let's have a follow-up call. And by the time you know it, it is 8 to 12 months trying to get a sponsor to say yes, nurture them, whatever collateral you're working, etc. So it's a big time frame, and giving yourself that much more time is going to be, especially if you're a new entrepreneur, even focusing on a small workshop, give yourself plenty of time. 3 months is, I think it's never enough time. 3 months is definitely not enough time. You need at least 6 to do the actual logistics, and then 3 months to actually launch it, plan it, be present fully in the event, and, actually have the event. So my perfect timeline, if I was going to say, hey, what's your perfect timeline? For somebody who's starting out first event, minimum 8 to 9 months.
Yeah. And I think even like for us, we've got an event that you've helped me with, and we started on it, October, November, and it's not going to be until October of next year.
Exactly. It's a year out. I mean, I would love it because it's first, bigger event, 50-ish people, having the sponsorship portion as well, a year, 100%.
Agree. And at first I was like, no, that's too long, because when you think about it, you're like, I don't need a year to plan 2 days worth of stuff, but you do. And you need to, even for me, it was like, okay, I actually really need to realize that, I'm asking people to come and speak for me and do, we have other expert trainers coming and doing different things. And then our sponsors and our educational partners. And that takes time, because the reality is just because, say, like, I'm free that weekend and it's a year out, it doesn't mean that somebody else, especially the educational partners, it doesn't mean that they're not already booked.
Oh, exactly. And again, you're still reliant on their communication back to you. And, it gets really tricky when, there's so many things going on and so many events lately. I see events popping up. I counted, there was at least 30 events in October that I wanted to attend or wanted to be part of. And I couldn't be. October is a busy month for events.
Yeah, I would say.
So, but start sooner than later, and get your favorite project management tool out, Asana, Trello, whatever you're using, and start putting that vision down and writing things out and taking time and really thinking about it. I always like to say that an event is a separate business plan because it has separate components. You're still creating the story, you're still creating the vision, the marketing, the launch.
Yeah.
It's a separate entity in itself, and treating it as, yes, it's still part of your brand, absolutely 100%, but treating the whole process as a separate, separate process is going to be where you're going to definitely succeed.
Right. And so let's kind of get into some of the meat and potatoes of your business and talk about, when I talk to people, I always tell them, like, oh my God, like, Alecia turned on the lights for me. Like, I never knew that some of the stuff that you have taught me and helped me obtain, even, I didn't even know it was like a thing. I didn't know it existed. I didn't know it was a possibility. And that includes sponsorship in the, like, in every capacity.
Right.
And so many other things. Can you kind of shed some light on, what the normal, totally doable stuff is that you teach?
Sure. So first steps is, I think, the best way to describe it, because a lot of women go into events, and if they're hosting retreats and they're hosting smaller workshops or masterminds, 10 to 25 people, even 50, up to 50 people, they just don't think sponsorship is attainable. They've heard down the pipeline some myth, some rumor that sponsors are hard to get. And while that is a possibility in some circumstances, most circumstances, I think it's just opening up a conversation and just pressing go. Again, my favorite thing to do in life is just go for it, because what's the worst that could happen? So an easy first thing to do, if you have an event, workshop, conference coming up with ample time, again, if you're 2 months, 3 months out, not saying, hey, I'm going to get $100,000 sponsorship, but shifting the mindset to, hey, I'm going to see who I'm working with right now. So in terms of software, if you've got a mail program, a CRM program, if you're using graphics like Canva, any kind of company that you are already partnered with and love and enjoy, reaching out to them is your first step, truly. So saying, hey, I love your program. I've been using it for X amount of months, years, whatever. I'm hosting an event. Love to see if there's partnership opportunities. That's it. It doesn't have to be complicated. And I always say that no is my favorite answer because next to the yes, obviously, but no also provides an opportunity of okay, great. What can I do to get a yes? and maybe not framing it like that, but what is something that you look for, company for next year's event, and what can I do to partner with you next year? Or is there a possibility of collaborating? So again, opening up the conversation. Sponsors are just people, right? And they're companies with people in them. So treating them like a nurturing relationship, friends and family, it's the same rules apply. They're not this scary, you're not sitting at a boardroom, maybe they are for the bigger ones, but for more digital-based companies, online companies, they're just a small team and they're humans. So pressing go, sending an email, if you don't get a response back, it's okay. I think people have the fear of rejection. And I just say, great, let's figure out the next step, right? It doesn't have to be end all or be all, right? If you've reached out to 5 companies, you haven't heard anything, let's keep going, right? Or let's figure out what went wrong or what's going on. Maybe they're the wrong company. So, I come into that perspective where I've had conversations with all of these companies on the back end, being part of sponsorship boards myself locally. I truly want to get to the nitty-gritty of why and how sponsors work. And I think I've really come to the place where I can be, coaching somebody and saying, okay, I know exactly what that terminology means. When they say, sorry, we don't have budget this year. Maybe they don't for sure, because a lot of sponsors plan, again, 12 months in advance. Next year, I think I've got 75 companies right now that have already allocated their funds for 2019. It's ridiculous. So understanding sponsors work so far in advance, and sometimes there's not a lot of give or take, but getting back to my original point, because I like to, is again, figuring out, okay, no, sorry, we're not interested. And taking that and dissecting it and figuring out, okay, what are they interested in, and how we can present the opportunity in a better way to them, if that's one of your favorite companies, let's say, to work with. A lot of people just reach out to 500 companies and hope for the best, and that's not the best strategy, really. You want to focus on 10 to 15 companies that really make you say, I would love to be sponsored by them, and work with those companies rather than hundreds of them that just go nowhere.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's funny because we even in our journey, we even had somebody tell us that all of their very small donations, like in-kind donations, and we were talking about, $5 items here, were allocated for the next several years.
That sounds, I don't think I've ever heard of that ever, especially for donations and like in-kind physical products. I've never heard of that. So some companies are just not willing to work with you, in that capacity. And hey, that's okay. Let's move on. Let's forget about them. If they don't want to work with you, then we don't want to work with them. Really.
Agree. And it's funny, not like funny, but it's interesting how you learn about different things as you get going.
Absolutely.
And I find that you get unattached to hearing no. Like if somebody doesn't want to work with you on something like that, then it's like, oh, well, okay, fine, no big deal. But because there's so many people who do. I just spoke with a beverage company, because you know me, how I like to have my little tea parties and stuff. Yeah. And they were like, yeah, email us here, because, sending me a box of tea or a couple of boxes of tea for them, they were like, yeah, heck yeah, use our tea.
Exactly. And the thing is that, like you said, people get attached to the no or the fear of getting rejected.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I literally get rejected every day, at least once. When I first started out, it was like rejection after rejection. So I'm kind of blind to that now. I'm just like, okay, whatever, it doesn't matter. But it's still, like I said, it's still better than a silent no or yes, because they've taken the time to respond to you to say no.
Right.
Really, it's time. They could just ignore you. So if they've said, no, sorry, we're not, doing this, budget, interested, whatever, that still provides you an opportunity just to figure out what they want. I just got, an email the other day and I said, hey, what's your marketing look like? And basically they said to me, I'm going to find the email because they said, sorry, we're not doing events. And if we are, they're very limited. We don't have time for phone calls. We're kind of, very small and we don't care. I'm like, great. Okay, great. So basically, they didn't say I don't care, but I figured, in a weird sense, I think he did say I don't really care to talk to you, but in at least I know they have a very small budget. So now I have that information that I can say to my clients, hey, we're interested in this company. So you know what? They're not willing to work with unless you know them personally, right? I feel like in those circumstances, you can have a very personalized, like if you got to know them in person and they're like, yes, let's collaborate. I think that would be different than just a straight cold email. So that then I always take that to the next step. If my client or if I'm really interested in getting to know that company, I will see where they're at, really. And it sounds really stalkerish as I say it out loud, but what events they're going to and where they're hanging out and really get to know them, so that I can figure out, hey, if I'm looking for collaboration or whatever, I have an in or I know somebody there that can help. So just, if you take it to the next step too, without being stalkerish, I think that's going to be a great secondary step or strategy. If you have a company that you just are dying for, correct?
Okay, yeah. So what do you think, obviously, besides just getting on the phone with you, what do you think is the first step to, exploring, like day one? I think I want to have an event. I think I want to get, like I'll use like my Cabo event, for example. I had, a small group of girls. We went to Cabo, like probably looking back now, I'm like, oh my gosh, my first event was international. Like, what was I thinking? But what's like your first, like, when someone says, I want to have an event, what's the first thing they need to do?
So the first thing, that's a great question, Amie, because I think the first thing that people do is jump 5 steps. And so the first step that you need to do is actually sit down and create the event. The mission, and not the mission, but more towards the why of the event and what is bringing you to bring people together in a live setting, and why are people going to be, leaving their house for you. And so I have a great freebie that actually brings you through that process. And it's a very, very important process because, like I said, if people jump this and they focus so much on the venue or like the buzz and having an event, and they get to the point where like, oh shoot, I haven't purchased tickets, or sorry, people haven't purchased tickets yet, and I'm not sure why. And it's because you've missed 5 steps in the beginning of creating a story, creating the vision, even having a vision board for your event. Most people don't do that, but connecting the base of your strategy into the why, even the hows, and creating that vision first off is the first step. Before you do any planning, before you go into seek venues, I know it's the fun stuff, but let's get the non-fun stuff out. Let's get the copy. Let's get the why. And getting even the copy, the brand story behind, the event really spectacular. And that's going to change the dynamic of your event.
Agree. And I love the idea of having a vision board for it. I like vision boards because I like I'm visual. I like to see things. I like to see them laid out. So I love that idea. And I know that you and I kind of had worked on one too, where we grab stuff, from the web and magazines and different ideas and events that I had attended. Like, yeah, I want to have a tea party at my next event, like.
Absolutely. And it just becomes more, now you can see it, you can feel it. Now it's more attainable. You're like 50% there. Instead of, if you don't have a vision board, it's almost like you don't know, it's almost like that you don't know what's going to go happen. You're like, oh my gosh, you have that anxiety portion. Whereas if you have, like, for my clients specifically, if someone's hiring me to create their event for them, I create a vision board for them, brand colors.
Yep.
I have the venue space, the gift bags, the food, the dynamic. I do a 3D rendition of the actual space with their brand and their logo and the name of the event and florals, and that changes everything for them. That 3D rendition is like gold. So for them to picture it is just, it's going to be incredible. It's going to change everything for you.
Yeah. And I think that, it's so funny that you say, like, think of it like a wedding. And, some people have like a wedding book, like a binder of,
Exactly.
color swatches and, images and all the different things, almost like a giant scrapbook. I think something like that is perfect for planning an event, because you can print out a picture of your venue. You can print out a picture of the room. You can keep all of your stuff, well, if you have, recovering perfectionist traits like me, you can put the little tabs in there and separate it out. Like, these are these are my vendors. These are my sponsors. These are, like, all the different things. And I almost feel a little bit like a crazy person saying these things, but having it all together in one place makes it so easy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can take it to, a print, paper, or you can take it on an online way where you just drag and drop. So whatever your, perfect way is, definitely. So absolutely, it has everything there for you. You're more organized. You have your strategy. You have everything planned out, and it just makes you feel more confident in selling tickets, achieving your goals, whether they're profit goals, whether they're, community goals, whatever goals you have. It just makes them that more attainable. And I promise you're going to sell your event out, and you're going to, having the right strategy in selling your event out and being confident in it is going to shift the mindset a little bit too, because a lot of people get anxious about the ticket sales and, oh my gosh, tickets, what am I going to do? And having little small tweaks to your mindset, to the education behind ticket sales. I always say to the clients, okay, ticket sales typically happen in ebbs and flows, and there's variables, absolutely. But knowing that ahead of time is going to help you in maybe lessening your anxiety, and lessening your stress levels and not being super stressy about things.
Agree. I think that goes with anything, it's one of the things that I teach my clients is to lead with confidence and lead with the things that you're confident in. So if you're not confident in it, people are going to be like, I'll probably go with somebody else. If you're like, oh, I'm not sure if I can do that, but let's give it a try, like, pay me anyways. They'll be like, probably not. But if you're confident in it, confident in your ticket sales, confident in your, all of your offers, whether it's a product, a service, it makes such a huge difference to your client when they're like, yeah, I'll have what she's having,
Exactly. So the confidence, absolutely stepping into that confidence, and then having somebody along the way, if you have a coach or mentor, asking them for more support around your event, because again, a lot of people think having an event is very, very easy. And they can, oh yeah, no problem. I'll get my boyfriend to be the, event planner. And then they walk away. It's like, oh shoot, I just lost 10K because I wasn't truly prepared or truly knew what went into an event, which is really sad for me to hear.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people too, in business and in events and in all the things, they forget about some of the unsexy things like accounting and budgets and taxes and, all like the legal stuff, like making sure that your venue, you have the appropriate insurance for your venue or even the appropriate insurance for your business. And I think some of that sometimes gets not so much overlooked, but just it's not something that's in the forefront, and it's not something that's, fun or sexy, if you will, to talk about.
Right. Absolutely. And then even like you said, the contracts and the budget, is so important. I think that's the second thing that I do. First vision, planning, getting the copy and even just working that out. And then it's budget. Sometimes I work the budget first because you need to know what you're stepping into. And they're no problem. I can just do it for $500. And while that's still kind of realistic, if you're planning a huge conference in a hotel space, in a big city, let's say, you're looking at a big chunk. So figuring out, can I do this, and can I cover those costs myself up front, because the hotel's going to want a deposit. Right. And just getting in the know, and you can do a smaller event that doesn't take that much money and have it at a co-working space. You just have to be very smart in your budget and all aspects of your budget, and tweaking that every week and making sure that you are, doing real time and estimate. So putting yourself in the know, 100%, and doing the unsexy things and blocking it off in your calendar to do that.
Well, and the other thing too is, I think, knowing what your venue allows and doesn't allow. Like some hotels, they don't allow you to host parties in your room. Like if you have a nice suite or a penthouse or something. So you have to get permission to, can I have guests? And, right. And even with that, do I need insurance to have them here?
Oh, absolutely. And especially if you can go two ways. You can go through, hosting an event with a food and beverage minimum, or you can go through an event hosting guest rooms. And then the legal contract on that is you have to read every single line in that contract, because, when are you on the hook for paying the hotel room block if, a certain amount is not met, and the attrition rate. There's so many things that go into it. And if you don't know, then you need to hire somebody that does.
Right. Because it's not something that most people just know randomly, right? Maybe I think somebody who's planned a wedding or who's worked in like corporate planning of events, like business meetings and stuff, they might be more savvy to it. But a lot of times it's just not stuff that we would even ever know.
Exactly. And so being in the know is going to be very, very, very good for you to same with any kind of business. Like I would never write my own contracts because
right.
Ever get into that position where you need to hire a lawyer, then and your contract is just fluff, then you're going to be in a very bad predicament. So I've hired a lawyer to create all of my contracts because I want to be protected. You just, you need to be protected, and your guests need to be protected.
Agree. And there's a lot of different things that come up that, again, you just don't think about as far as being protected. Like what happens if someone's luggage is lost? What happens if somebody falls and gets hurt at the airport? Like it's something that you think about, like, oh, I couldn't be held liable for that. I wasn't even there. But, legally, sometimes those ramifications can carry over to you.
Oh, right. Especially if somebody says, oh, well, it's your event, it's your fault.
Right.
There's some crappy people on the earth, and we don't know. I mean, people sue people for everything these days. Maybe not in Canada, but, there's...
the U.S. for sure.
That's what I was getting to. But, you just don't know. So being safe, being prepared, having a plan A, B, and sometimes C, depending on, where you are, proximity. It's very important to me for my clients to be super safe and airtight. And if this happens, then we do this. If that happens, we do, just having a very good strategy in place before.
Right. Yes. And I love that. And I love how clear you made it for me to get that strategy in place and to start to really get some of those ideas flowing. It was kind of like once you opened the door, it was like, ta-da! and it's been great.
Right, exactly. And sometimes asking questions, I mean, I always find for myself, we always get hung up on ourselves. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we don't see ourselves as so when I'm, picking at you and you're like, I don't know. Or you have one question, I say, okay, elaborate on that. And you're like, oh yeah. And it's kind of like, oh yeah, wait a second. So it's going one step further constantly, always, always, always going one step further. In my course, I always say, I use my son as an analogy because he will ask me, Mommy, what's that? And I say, a pen. Why? It's a pen to write. Well, why? It's a pen to write because I need to write notes. Why? And then he asks why over and over and over and over until it's a record. But it's almost the same thing. Finding out the why and expanding on it until you're tired. I mean, it's easier to work with somebody with, doing that. But, if you're working on it yourself with your team, keep expanding on that one thing. And I'm sure you're going to say, hey, wait a second, light bulb moment.
Yeah, no kidding. And kids are like such the best example because they don't give up. Like, you think about those questions. Well, why? How come? What do you mean? Right. I don't understand. Like, and they don't stop until they do understand, which I wish that even for myself, I wish sometimes that I did that even a little bit more. But the same goes with walking. You fall and fall and fall and they bonk their knees and elbows and heads and they don't give up. They keep going and keep trying.
Keep going.
And, I think there's a lesson to be learned from our little ones from time to time.
Keep going. Exactly. 100%. Yeah.
Well, I know that you were going to offer the listeners here a free gift. What did you have in mind for them?
Absolutely. So my free gift today is going to be a recording on how to fill up your event. So I've got a resource right now that's available for everybody, but my filling up your event, it's a training, it's a 1-hour video training. You're going to love this because I go through a simple strategy that you can use today for your event retreat, no matter what time it is. So if it's in 3 weeks, 3 months, 4 years, you can start utilizing that today. So I'm definitely going to give you the access, free access, and you're going to love it.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Okay, so I can personally vouch for Alecia that her stuff is pretty epic. So you guys are definitely going to want to take advantage of this offer. What I'm going to do is I'll just post the link in the show notes so that you guys can just easily grab that and get started listening to that video or watching that video right away. And what's another way for them to connect with you? Where can they find you and more information about you?
Right. So you can go to my website, eventistrybyalecia.com, and they can connect with you there, Facebook. I'm hanging out on Facebook primarily these days, although I want to get into Instagram more. But eventistrybyalecia.com is where you can find everything: courses, freebies, fun stuff, strategy calls, etc.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. And I feel like we covered so much good stuff, but it's really only the tip of the iceberg. So definitely make sure you grab that freebie. Make sure you give Alecia a follow on Facebook and all the places. And if you're planning an event, be sure you connect with her because I can speak from experience. She definitely makes the process so much better.
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. All right, talk soon.